Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Free the Bishops. I'm your host, Carmelite Quotes, and our co host, Rosary Mom, has this episode off. But we're going to have a great discussion today because we've got a guest. And I'd like to introduce you to our friend, Pedro Molina. Welcome, Pedro.
Hi, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. Pedro is a well-known editorial cartoonist for Confidencial, which is one of the leading independent media outlets from Nicaragua. But he's also a featured contributor to the Counterpoint newsletter on Substack, and you can find his work distributed by Go Comics. I just signed up for Go Comics today, as a matter of fact. You can
Great.
also find his cartoons in Arcamax Daily. Is it pronounced Kos?
I think it's chaos. Yeah.
Either way, you can find
it's a
him
play
there.
word.
And his work frequently appears also in Politico and many other U.S. newspapers across the state, even in the hotbed of Mennonite Indiana, which is interesting. So anyway, we last talked with Pedro in 2023 during one of our bilingual spaces on X, formerly known as Twitter. Now, Pedro keeps his fingers on the pulse in Nicaragua because, well, he does a cartoon for Nicaragua every day.
Yeah.
And so not only does he know Nicaraguan history, being a native Nicaraguan, Esteli, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously he's very up to date with the current events. So I'm just glad that we have a chance to chat a few minutes with him about everything that's happened, especially since the end of December in Nicaragua. So why don't we just get right into it, Pedro?
Yeah. Let's go ahead.
No, there's one thing that I love about your, I'm going to call it Twitter
Mhm.
feed, and that's the fact that you have had a pinned post for years now. And it roughly translates into English for our listeners. It says, when you feel that you're overcome by fatigue, that you're overcome by despair, it's at those moments that we must remember with all the more reason the famous slogan in Nicaragua, let your mother surrender. Que se rinda tu madre. Let
Que
your
se rinda tu
mother
madre.
surrender. Can you tell us a little bit about that famous phrase and, how that sums up for you what's been going on in the last 5 years?
Yeah, when I put that and I decided to pin it on my Twitter, it was a time when everybody was starting, to really worry about where this thing, where everything that was happening in Nicaragua was going. And if you see the date, actually, I think I put it up in July or June
I
2018.
think, honestly, I think it was July 18, 2018.
Yeah, yeah. So as you can see, was still everything was still going on in Nicaragua at the time, and even then there was still there were a few people even at that time that were starting to think, where is this everything going? Are we going to get something out of this or not? And it was a little bit of despair even at that early on everything, and I decided to put up that quote because it's a very very strong quote that a lot of people, of course, it became very popular during the revolution, but I choose that one specifically because it's attributed to one Nicaraguan poet, Leonel Rugama, who happens to be from the same city than me. He was from Esteli, and he was killed by the Somocista army back in the 70s together with another person. And they were surrounded by the armed guards of the Somoza dynasty, and they were asking them for them to surrender, right? And their answer was que se rinda tu madre. So yeah, it's something that we Nicaraguans, we do understand in the context that when you think everything is lost, you still have that fire inside you of challenging the situation. And yeah, so that's why I choose that one and put it
I
up.
think that's great. I'm checking back on your timeline and I see that you published that on July 12th. Well, that's 3 days later after the mob descended on the priests and bishops in the Basilica d'Iriamba.
Hmm.
So, talk about things heating up. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, I can appreciate that, and I understand. You've got a good sense of history. You've got a good sense of where the country has been, where the country's headed. I think better than most people I know, because you have to be such a critical observer of
yeah,
the situation. And what I wonder, you say that nobody saw April 2018 coming, either
yeah,
from the opposition or the critics, or even from the regime saw it. But, you know, you state that the long-term strategy against the Ortega Murillo regime needs to work, together so that the regime falls tomorrow.
yeah.
And, when we think about, you know, que se rinda tu madre, let your mother surrender, how does that fit together with today's situation?
Well, the thing is that after so many years of struggle, and so many people who has lost their lives, and some other people who has lost everything they had in Nicaragua, who has lost their country, even their nationality. It's indeed a very dark time for a lot of people. And some of them have decided, I can't continue this path. That's it. I'm done. I'm going to devote my time to myself and to support my family. And there in the exile, there is always the, let's call it temptation, even when I don't think it's the right word to use here, but I'm going to use it because of, my English is not the best. So
Yeah,
anyway,
so it's okay,
of, of,
Pedro.
of
Your English
deciding,
is great.
thank you, of deciding that, I'm going to take care of myself, and I need to provide for my family. So, you know, the fight for a free Nicaragua is going to be lower in my priorities, and that's completely fine. That's completely, something that anyone can understand. But there are some other people also who say, okay, so I'm going to continue with this fight. I'm going to continue fighting for freedom in Nicaragua, but we have to think in a long term, okay? And in a way, thinking about the long term is saying we have to wait until this guy dies, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then see
Right.
what can we do with that. And I am not I'm not happy with that. I don't subscribe to that way of thinking. Why? Because I don't think things will improve automatically if the dictator dies. I'm sorry, I don't see it that way. Some people tend to think that once Ortega is dead, everything is going to be easier, and we're going to be able to uh, go back to Nicaragua and we have democracy right away and all that. And that's, for me, honestly, I don't see that happening just because. We have to work towards that. And we can't be tempted to put all our hope in the death of the dictator.
I
Why?
think that
Because,
go.
yeah,
Yeah.
his wife is there,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
she
kids
she
too.
wants she wants to fill that spot as soon as that spot is available. And if not her, then we have one of their kids that have been pushing lately, like the new face of the dictatorship, like Irano Ortega. And if
Mm-hmm.
not him, we have at least 8 more waiting behind him to take that spot. So if we are not prepared, if we don't think that in a strategy that it will help us, to solve this problem as soon as possible, we may lose our chance to solve it at all. And another thing that I was thinking when I wrote that and mentioning the fact that nobody saw April 2018 coming is that I'm always expecting the unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
If something, it's something that our history has teach us, that with Nicaraguans, this is something that you should always count as a factor. Something may happen at any moment, at any time, and you better be ready for that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I think back to June 2013
Mm-hmm.
when there were the previous protests, if you will, and the youth standing up for the senior citizens who were just, manhandled
Yeah.
by the police. So what I'm thinking is, if we knew this had happened in 2013, the people who um, were part of those INSS protests, certainly, they were, it seems to me, they were prepared. The people were prepared to stand up for the rights once again when the new crackdown came and we're making
Yeah.
changes to Social Security. What do you mean?
Exactly.
You think that everybody's just going to roll over and play dead? No, they
Yeah.
remember what happened 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Then see, that's something that that's what I'm talking about. After what happened with Ocupa Inc., which is what you are mentioning right now, somebody could have told nothing is going to happen later because you see how the regime cracked down on people and people will not want to move again against them anymore. And then April 2018 came and it happened. And I am pretty sure it can happen at any time, right? There are cracks on the regime, whether we like it or they like it or not, whether we acknowledge that or not. The fact is that there are cracks on the regime, and it can happen for, I don't know. If you ask me, what will be like the last drop on the glass that that it will uh, uh, initiate everything again, I don't know what that will be, but I am pretty sure that it's going to happen again. Yeah.
Well, just the very fact that, Miss Nicaragua wins Miss Universe and people,
Oh yeah.
without thinking, take to the streets.
With
Here
that,
we go, you know,
exactly.
and
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 once
so
again, yeah, and once again, the regime was afraid of that. And you see everything that happened after that. And it was a beauty contest, right? So it can be anything. It can be anything at any time. Yeah.
yeah, I see that totally. I totally see that. You talk about people who inspire you. Um, and you wrote a tweet that says, to the people who have inspired me, are now inspiring me, and will inspire me, to those who are the light in the candle, not a flash in a pan, to those who paid the price of believing they're worth more than what the system dictates, to
Yeah.
those, yeah, everybody is dreaming. Well, everybody except those in power are dreaming of a free and just Nicaragua. And I get the sense in talking with you that we can't, those of us who are allies of the pro-democracy movement in Nicaragua, as well as the people themselves, we can't let up on the pressure that we're bringing to bear, whether
Yeah.
it's sanctions, whether it's, grassroots advocacy, whether it's, I don't know about the remesas, sending the money to Nicaragua, because I know that's a two-edged sword, but we can't let up. We have to keep putting the pressure
Yeah.
on the regime, don't you think?
Yeah. And the thing is that the first people that we really, really need to convince that this is a fight still worth fighting is ourselves.
Mm,
Again, because of everything that I was mentioning earlier, the fact that if you are outside Nicaragua, you have to eat, you have to provide for your family and everything. You kind of, you can start thinking, I shouldn't be focusing on this no more, or at least at this level. Anything that we have done or nothing that we have done so far has had the impact that we wanted to have. Uh, this sense of maybe it's time to give up, that kind of feeling that you may have. Uh, if you are on that spot and you are seeing somebody who's still doing something, who is still excited about doing something about what is happening in Nicaragua, who is still worried about what's happening over there, and I think it will motivate you to keep to keep going this road, to keep the good fight. And but that's something that we have to do among each other. And it also is, for me, it's important to acknowledge, and that's why I wrote that tweet. That's what I have done a few cartoons about that, acknowledging and inspiring people and telling the people who are still, our allies, people like you, like everybody outside Nicaragua, who are still wondering what is happening over there, and trying to find a way to help, that we are still here, that we still do care as Nicaraguans,
Yeah.
and acknowledge that they inspire us, and we can also be an inspiration to somebody else to keep doing things. But it's
Hmm.
still, but again, the idea is to keep trying stuff. If something didn't work, then try something else. But try just to keep moving, because if we stay still, they will, you know, stomp on us. I'm sorry
Yeah,
that.
no,
I
it's
hope I did
fine.
that.
No, you said the right thing. You'll be
Yeah,
trampled.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I know that Rosary Mom said to me the other day, well, now that the bishops and the priests are in the Vatican, should the daily rosary focus on something other than the persecution in Nicaragua? And I said, oh my goodness, no. I can already tell you what the church in Nicaragua would be saying. Please continue to pray for us.
Oh yeah,
So it's a tremendous need. There's no doubt about it.
yeah. And also we have to say that even when that happened, the persecution against the church, it hasn't stopped.
No.
Right after they send all these priests to the Vatican, they kidnap and kick out of the country at least three more
Yes.
priests. And there is one that we don't know where he is. We,
No.
we don't know if he was able to get out of the country by himself, or what happened to him. So this is an ongoing crisis, and it just changed it, like the way it is presented, because now these priests are on the Vatican, but we don't know what's going to happen with them either. I mean, we don't know if they are going to be sent on some kind of mission by the Pope to some other place to keep working, if they are just going to stay there in the Vatican without talking to nobody, because no journalist has been able yet to talk to any of these people,
That's
at
right. And
least,
not even the priests who were sent to the Vatican in October. There's
yeah,
been no.
exactly. And why is that? Why is that happening? So I think we have to keep praying, and also working, uh, you know, for the church in Nicaragua and for Nicaragua in general. Yeah.
Speaking of praying and working for the church in Nicaragua, I want to ask you a question about somebody who actually does work for the church in Nicaragua, and that's the Cardinal Archbishop of Managua.
Yeah.
You know better than anyone else. Will share with the listeners that recently Cardinal Leopoldo Brenes lashed out at the Nicaraguan media, and I'm sure he's talking specifically about the independent media who operate from outside the country. And he talked about reliable sources, but he was actually handing out a heavy criticism, saying that there are media outlets that quote unquote promote false news to stir up and distort things. And you say it's very interesting how Brenes is more concerned about what is or is not happening with journalism than what is or is not happening within his own church. I'm
Yeah.
wondering, Cardinal Brenna's criticism, is there a hint of truth in what he has to say?
Look, the thing is that I say that because every time that an independent journalist has approached him to ask him about the whereabouts of all the priests that have been kidnapped by the dictatorship, how these priests are doing, even the priests that were, I would say, detained in one of the house for seminaries in Managua, those people,
Mm-hmm.
he would say that he didn't know a thing about it, that he couldn't say nothing because he didn't knew a thing. He wasn't aware of things. And when you will ask him about anything else, about what is happening in the country and the people and the complaints of the people or everything, he will say, I don't know nothing about that because I am not in social media. I don't follow social media. I have no idea what you are talking about and everything. And then, journalists are trying to keep to do their jobs. They are asking to the person who is supposed to be like, the most important, one of the most important voices of the church in Nicaragua, he's not saying anything. And when he says something, when he finds enough, you know, bravery to talk about something about Nicaragua, most of the time it's just to complain about journalists. You never hear Brenes criticizing something that will happen to have some kind of connection with the regime. Never. And for me, that's something that it keeps my attention. Some people say, well, he is afraid, as everybody else, of something bad happening to him. But okay, so he's afraid. He doesn't want to confront the regime directly or anything. Then why is not doing something else, like providing good information to journalists, or supporting the people who are supporting the priests who have been imprisoned or kicked out of the country? But he does just the opposite. He go after these people. He go after the journalists to criticize them. But he is not brave enough to talk about all the other stuff that is happening in Nicaragua.
There are reports that he is, for want of a better term, compromised.
Mm-hmm.
That either the regime has some kind of information on him that keeps him under their thumb, or there is someone who is part of the regime who is watching over him, like a guardian kind of thing. What can you unpack some of that?
Those are just rumors. I remember one of the most popular ones, or at least one that I used to hear a lot until recently. It was that the reason was that his mother was very ill, and they used it. He's more just like to keep him quiet because he would say something that the regime will not like. They will stop taking care of his mother that was very ill. I understand. I don't know if she was in a hospital or something. And some people used to say that that was the reason why Brenes was behaving that way. But then this lady, she died, and everything kept being the same way. So, okay, so it wasn't that. What it was then, I don't know. I have to tell you that not his case, but there are some specific cases. I don't want to mention names just to know, but I do know. I do remember at least two cases of priests that they were very critical of the government. Very very critical of the government, and then suddenly something happened. They got their computers stolen from them, and then in a matter of days, they were pro-government. Okay? So it was very clear that they found something on those computers. Now, if I am not wrong, I think the same thing happened with, I don't know if it was with Baez or with Alvarez or maybe with both, that the same thing happened and somehow somebody stole their computers and they didn't change, which it means that they didn't found anything on those computers that they could use against them, right?
Well,
So,
I can tell you what happened at the end of October 2018,
mhm,
because I got, I was involved in this, there was one specific troll on Twitter
Mm-hmm.
who published the phone number for Monsignor Baez's phone.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was alarmed to see this, I'm starting to unravel this thread a bit to see who is this guy who states that he has the phone number for Bishop Baez's mobile phone. And as I'm looking through his tweets, I'm seeing one that doxes me.
Mm-hmm.
And he got my real name
Mm-hmm.
from having hacked the bishop's phone. And do you remember now when Bishop Baez's phone was hacked and he had to get a whole new phone, and it was
Mm-hmm.
a big mess. It was a
Yeah.
big mess in October of
Yeah.
2018.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I had never planned on maintaining anonymity in social media, but when that happened, no, thank you. I don't want any
Yeah.
part of having my
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah.
So
that's a way. That's what the reason I am mentioning all this is just to let everybody know that yes, that the regime, they can do stuff like that. Okay, they can install computers, they can install stuff, phones, or everything, and try to find out something, to blackmail priests.
yeah,
If they feel like it, if they feel that they can do it, they will find something. And but I don't know if that's the case specifically with Brenes. Honestly, I don't think so. I think it's a mix of fear, but also I don't know, so many other things that it will be like guessing too much, and I don't like to get into that.
yeah,
But you can feel that there is something going on with Brenes for a while now.
sure,
And I am afraid because he's supposed to put his resignation letter very soon. I don't
very
know.
soon.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going to happen if the Pope accept his resignation right away. He has to name another cardinal. And then I have been also talking in social media about how a great opportunity this is, to prove not just Nicaraguans, but everybody who lives in the exile, who is forced out of their country. And there are so many of us right now all over the world. It will be a great gesture if the Pope will say, I'm going to name a cardinal out of you people, since we have been living, we have experienced this like any of you with the Nicaragua case, having so many priests kicked out of the country and decide, okay, I'm going to name a cardinal out of you guys. And I was saying, he has two great options over there. He has Baez and he has Alvarez. And it would be great to see something like that happen. I don't know if that's to dream too much, but but
It's
again,
a good dream to have.
it's a good dream to have. If we are going to have dreams, let's have good ones.
That's
And
right.
and because what the other scenario is that the Pope is going to keep Brenes where he is, uh, despite the fact that he's not doing a lot. And I do know, and this is something that I can say for sure, I do know that there is a lot of people, even inside the priesthood in Nicaragua, who are not happy with the way that Brenes is behaving. All right, and why they don't come out and say it out loud? Maybe it's because out of respect of their votes, maybe because they are afraid of the situation in Nicaragua, but I don't know for sure because I have talked to some of them. And there is this feeling that Brenes doesn't want to do everything that he could do about the situation that the church is going through in Nicaragua.
As we talk about Cardinal Brenes and the situation with the church, there's one conversation that we've been having here on the podcast for the past week, 10 days, and that's about the importation of the Chinese model of church governance
Hmm.
to Nicaragua, where the regime itself will be in control of the Catholic Church, similar to what happens in China. Have you given that any thought? Have you had any conversation with someone about that concept?
No, I have read some rumors about that. I also put out some tweets about that specifically and how bad it will be if the Vatican or the local church or whoever is in charge decide to go that way. What a big problem that will be for everybody inside Nicaragua. And I was giving the reasons for that. And I was saying, one of the reasons that the regime wants to control the Catholic Church in Nicaragua, there are several reasons for that. One of the reasons is, of course, that they want to control everything, right? And the Catholic Church has a very important voice in the life of the Nicaraguans. Of course, they want to control that. But also, there is the civic aspect of the life of the Catholic people in Nicaragua that get together. They get together because of the church. I mean, people who get together in their towns because they go to the same church to I don't know, to do stuff like helping the needy, on their neighborhoods, or I don't know, celebrating Catholic parties like baptism or the confirmation sacraments, or this kind of stuff. A lot of life, a lot of communications, a lot of interactions that happen at that level, that are spaces of somehow safe spaces for these people because they have known each other for years, because they assist to the same church in their town. So they had coffee, they had trust in each other. And all those interactions happen outside the control of the government. So the
Mm-hmm.
government, they also want to control that. And another thing is that, and this has to be specifically with the sacrament of compassion, of penitence. If we see how things are in Nicaragua right now, a lot of people are afraid to say and really how they are feeling inside Nicaragua. They are afraid to share their opinions, their views of the country with the people they are working with in their offices, in their jobs, and sometimes they are afraid to do it on their neighbors, with the neighbor where they live, and even sometimes with their own family. They are very careful about what they say because they are afraid that somebody could go and say something to the local representative of the regime or something. But they do have this sacrament of compassion, and over there
Yes.
they could go to the priest and say, talking about the respect that should happen with the confession. I'm feeling this and this and this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's another space that it's very important for the people, because maybe it's the only place where they can feel free for a second, for a couple of
Mm-hmm.
minutes, and get everything they have inside them.
Yes.
And even that very private place, the government wants to control. And so, and then it's the thing, of course, that they also, and this is something that I have mentioned before, they see themselves as gods, right? So they want to take the place of God in the minds of Nicaraguans. It's not that they want the people to obey them; they want the people to also praise them. You know, and so it's a very toxic relationship, or a very toxic intention that they have by
Yes.
by persecuting the church in Nicaragua. And if the Vatican, if the local church leaders let this happen, if they let the regime to control who is going to be, attending this church and this other one, and all these people respond to them, and they become spies basically for the regime, then I don't know what is going to happen with the faith inside the country. I am pretty sure it's not going to die, but it's going to be very similar to the first Christian communities that they had to have their celebrations in secret for all
Yeah.
this structure, but because it's no longer serving them, it's
Hmm.
serving the regime, right? So that will be very sad and it's very difficult. So no, I don't think the taking, sending these priests outside of the country, the situation is going to get better. It can get even worse. And yeah, we all should care about that.
Yeah, I think it will get worse before it gets better. There's no doubt about that. Before we close our conversation, I want to take just a slight detour, and that's to talk about the most famous, or one of the most famous Jesuit graduates in the world today, and that's Miss Universe, Shanice Palacios,
Mm-hmm.
the former Miss Nicaragua. Maybe if you have a moment from time to time when you're not doing your own designs to see what the latest costume design she's wearing
Mm-hmm.
uh, on Instagram, I find it fascinating to see how she is using her platform on Instagram to promote Nicaragua in ways that I never expected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is, I'm thinking of in her stories. She is constantly promoting Nicaraguan content. And I think it's fantastic. What
Yeah.
I wonder is she going to lose that voice by having to spend more and more focus on the world as Miss Universe, or will she be able to maintain that voice, do you think?
I think she's very smart, very, very smart. And I am trusting, or at least I hope that she keeps being that smart and grows into it and find new ways and very clever ways, by the way, to let the people know how she feels about what is happening in Nicaragua and everything about Nicaragua in a very subtle way, in the way that she understands the place where she is right now, and she understands that she has a job right now, that she is Miss Universe, and
And
she
it
has
is a job, believe
and
me.
it is a job, and that job comes with a lot of requirements that she has to follow and but even then, Nicaragua is always on her mind. She hasn't forgotten about her country. And like you are saying, she doesn't lose an opportunity to push up, Nicaragua, to let the people know about her country, where she comes from, and everything. And that's great because oh, this is like a great country. If you never heard about Nicaragua before, but about what she's telling, in any show, you get, interested in it and you want to know more about it, then you will find out what is happening in Nicaragua, and maybe you will care about that too. So I think it's a great work, which the work that she's doing right now. I really hope, because this is something that the regime has been trying for a while right now, to somehow take advantage of that, somehow use her on their, and for their purpose. I mean, I'm talking about the regime, but they haven't been able to do it yet. And I think that shows a lot of character from her part, and
Yes.
uh, and the fact that, again, she's very smart with everything she says. She's very careful, but I have no doubt that she understands what is happening, and she's trying to manage things the best way she can, and try to help on her own way. And I think that's great. Yeah.
I have a suspicion that when the year of her reign ends next fall, she's going to get contract offers right and left and will probably end up being the biggest Nicaraguan media sensation in English-speaking media. I just
Uh,
have that feeling.
yeah, yeah, I hope so. I
I
hope
hope so
so.
too.
I don't know if she's going to be able to go back to Nicaragua at all. I mean, that's something that's, again, she has to say that she's coming back, right? I mean, but I don't know. Again, I'm trusting that she's smart enough to make the best decisions for her career, for her, and keep, uh, helping Nicaragua in the way that she can.
That's
Yeah.
great. I want to say thanks again for joining us today. This has been a great opportunity for us to follow up on the previous discussion that we had on Twitter and X, excuse me. But also, it's an opportunity to catch up in terms of what's happening right now in Nicaragua, and that's so, so important. So thanks so much, and would you stick around until the end of the broadcast while we pray for a moment?
Sure, sure. Yeah, and thanks
All
for the
right.
invitation again. And I'm sorry, if my English is too limited for everything that I wanted to say. I hope people at least understood the most important parts of my
I think
intervention.
that I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did.
Okay.
Today we're going to be praying once again for the needs of the persecuted church in Nicaragua. People have been hearing us share this petition since day one. Today is episode 26, but we're praying not only for these bishops and priests who are in the Vatican, who certainly are going to be needing healthcare in terms of spiritual health, emotional health, physical health, but also we're reaching out in prayer for those who need to have a spiritual conversion. And I'm thinking especially of Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo,
Yeah.
because without conversion of heart, in their hearts, there will be no opening, no change, no nothing. And so you're exactly right when you say that. So, listeners and Pedro, we're going to pause for a moment of prayer. In the
Okay.
name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Listen, I'm so grateful to everyone for joining us today. Don't forget that when you share this podcast with your pastors, with the leaders in your diocese or your local church, you can help to shine a light on the crisis in Nicaragua. You already know that we're available on a number of platforms, Spotify, obviously, but also Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and Castbox. And, you can subscribe to us on your RSS feed too. But when you subscribe, you'll get notifications about when each episode is published. So we want to say thanks again for listening. Thanks again, Pedro, for being with us today.
Thank
And
you.
we hope that everyone will join us in supporting and lifting up those who are facing persecution in Nicaragua. So God bless everyone. God bless.